So I actually haven't worked this problem before. I just found this picture and we're going to do the same thing that we did in class. So to find the slope of a demand curve, I just inverse demand curve. The slope of an inverse demand curve is change in P over change in Q. Okay, so let's start with that. All we need is two prices so we can find a change in P. So here I got one, I've got another. The change in P here is 10. The change in Q here is 20. So my change in P over my change in Q, the slope of my inverse demand curve is 10 negative, because it's a negatively sloped, right? Price fell by 10 here, quantity increased by 20. If we're going from point A to point B. So my slope is negative a half. Now I need the equation for this inverse demand curve. And so the equation goes in the form, basically P is equal to MQ plus B. And I need to find this intercept. Well, what is that value? That's the value. So the intercept is the value if Q is equal to 0, what's P? Well, oh no, it's not on here. If there was a number written here, we'd have it and we would just write it down and our equation would be done. But we don't have it, so we have to figure out what it is. Well, I think the easiest way to do that, there's several ways we could do it, but I think the easiest way to do that is as follows. Let's figure out, we want to know what is P. Our question for the intercept is what is P if Q is equal to 0, okay? So if I had an equation, I'd just plug in Q equals 0, but I'm trying to find the equation. So let's see, what do we know? We know if P is 0, Q is 40. We know if P is 6, Q is 28. We know if P is 16, Q is 8. So here I have a change in 6. Oh, what is 40 minus 28? I'm actually going to use a calculator, even though I should be able to do that in my head. 12. Oh, yeah, I should have known that. Why should I have known that? Because I already figured out the slope. It tells me for every 1 unit change in P, Q is going to change by 2. So if P changes by 6, then Q's got to change by 12, right? So here I should be able to not even have to do the math on the other side. Here it changed by 10, so this is going to change by 20, right? Because it's, again, this divided by this is going to be 1/2 every time. So we want to know, well, what if this changed by 8, right? Because I want a 0. If this changed by 8, what does this change over here have to be? Well, it has to be 4, right? Because this divided by this needs to be 1/2. So 16 minus, plus 4 is 20. So I found my intercept there. It's 20. So now I have my inverse demand curve. The equation for my inverse demand curve, it's not even M. Let's not even make that M. It'll be better like this. Change in P over change in Q times Q plus some intercept. So we know P is equal to negative 1/2 times Q plus B, my intercept, which is 20. Okay, I like to write it like this. So then I always check. So let's check with the point that we have. If Q is equal to 28, half of 28 is 14. 20 minus 14 is 6. Hooray! We found that equation. Now, okay, so here we have it. Now I want to find the demand curve. That just means to find the demand curve, I need to solve for Q, right? Inverse demand is P is my Y variable, demand Q is my Y variable. So I'm just going to add 1/2 q to each side. Oop, that's a p, not a q. Okay, but I want to get the q by itself, so I'm going to subtract p from each side. And then I want to get the q by itself, so I'm going to multiply everything by 2. So I multiply everything by 2 times 2 times 2. 2 times 1/2 is 1. 20 times 2 is 40. Here is my demand curve, the equation for my demand curve. And again, I can check, does that work? So if P is equal to 6, if I plug a 6 in here, it's going to be 12. 40 minus 12 is indeed 28, right? So then Q equals 28, and that's the point on my curve. Provide an interpretation for the slopes and the intercept. This is maximum price anybody would be willing to pay. Because my point here is price is 20, quantity is 0, right? Over here on this intercept, price, which I measure this way, is 0, and quantity is 40. So that means, what does it mean for price to be 0? It means if this thing were free, people would want 40 of them. The slope here, if I do, let's look at this slope here. This says for every 1 unit change in P, this says if P goes up by 1, Q will go down by 2, right? That's what we find.